reading in verse 1 of Joshua chapter 7. Verse 1. And the children of Israel committed a trespass in the accursed thing. For Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah of the tribe of Judah, took of the accursed thing. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against the children of Israel. And Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is beside Bethaven on the east side of Bethel, and spake unto them, saying, Go up and view or spy on the country. And the men went up and viewed or spied on Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said unto him, Let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up, soldiers go up, and smite or attack Ai, and make not all the people to labor there, for they are but few. He said, there are just a few people there. Don't send all the soldiers up there. Won't take but just a few, 2,000 or 3,000. And that way not all the soldiers will have to work. Everybody's tired. Verse 4, So there went up there to Ai, of the people, of the children of Israel, the soldiers, about 3,000 men, and they fled before the men of Ai. They turned tail and ran. They got beaten. And the men of Ai, verse 5, the men of Ai smote of them about 36 men. 36 men died. For they chased them from before the gate, even unto Shevarim, and smote them in the going down, or in other words, as they were running away. Wherefore the hearts of the people melted and became as water. And Joshua rent his clothes, or he tore his clothes, as the custom of the Jewish people was for heartache and sorrow. Whenever a horrible thing had happened, a great thing of tragedy, they would rip their clothes before they fell on their face in prayer as a sign of a broken heart. And Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth upon his face before the ark of the Lord, even until the eventide, or the evening, and he and the elders of Israel, and put dust upon their heads. And Joshua prayed, and here's his prayer. He says, Alas, O Lord God, he said, Wherefore hast thou at all brought this people over Jordan to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? Is that why you brought us here? Brought us out of Egypt just to bring us up here in Israel and destroy us? Would to God we had been content to and dwelt on the other side of the Jordan. He said we should have never came into Israel. We should have never came into the Canaan land. And he said, O Lord, what shall I say when Israel turned their backs before their enemies and run like cowards? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land shall hear of it, and shall circle us around and cut off our name from the earth. And what wilt thou do unto thy great name? Now literally, here's what happened. Listen carefully. Here's the story. Joshua was leading the children of Israel in the battle. Now, Moses brought the children of Israel out of Egypt. You remember, they crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. And they started to go into the country first time, and the people got scared and said, No, there's giants in the land. Said, they're too big for us to handle. Let's don't go in there. Let's don't go into Israel. And so they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years until a great many people had died off. And then God said, okay, now it's time to go back in. Moses brought the children of Israel up towards the river Jordan. And then God said, Moses said, you're not going over. You're going to come home and be with me. You're dead. You're going to die. And so Moses didn't get to go into Canaan. But Joshua was made the leader of all the children of Israel. And here we find Joshua leading the soldiers into battle. But now before this battle, this is the battle of Ai. Ai was a little bitty town. But just before this battle, they had just won the big victory at Jericho. You remember the story of how the walls of Jericho fell when Joshua and the soldiers went to fight against Jericho. And so they had won that great victory. And Jericho was a big city, a giant city, and a lot of people there. And they beat them. Matter of fact, they didn't lose anybody. Nobody even died there among the children of Israel. The Bible doesn't record anybody being killed at all. But now watch. Here's the amazing thing. Joshua and the children of Israel had been commanded of God before they went to fight the battle of Jericho. Before they did, God said, whenever you go in and whenever I deliver Jericho into your hands, God says, don't take anything out. He said, I want you to kill everybody. And he said, and don't bring anything home. Now, usually whenever an army, when the soldiers and the children of Israel, they would win a war, when they'd win a battle, or even the whole war, they got the spoils of war. What it means, spoils of war, it simply means that they got to bring home everything that they found. And they got to get the money, they got the clothes of the people, they got to get their cattle, and then they'd bring home some slaves, people that weren't killed, they'd bring them home and make them their slaves, and that way they'd have to serve them. That was spoils of war. But God told Joshua and the children of Israel, says, don't take anything home from Jericho. You leave everything there. It belongs to me. It'll be an offering to me so that I'll bless you the rest of the time while you're fighting in Israel and trying to get the land back. So God said, leave everything there. Kill everybody and everything, and don't bring anything out. Leave all the money there. Burn it. Set it on fire. And leave it there. So that's what they were supposed to do. But in verse 1, we find out that Achan took of the accursed thing. Or in other words, Achan took what God said to leave alone. Here's what happened. God told the children of Israel, don't bring anything home. So Joshua, he told all the soldiers, he said, all right, guys, he said, we're going to go fight Jericho. And he said, whenever we go, and once we win, he said, don't anybody bring anything home. And everybody said, all right, whatever you say. Yes, sir. We won't bring anything home. And so that was the plan. And Joshua and his men got ready to fight Jericho. And I can just imagine that some of the soldiers said, General Joshua, got a question. Sir, I'd like to ask you, how are we going to fight? How are we going to fight Jericho? How are we going to win that battle? And Joshua, he said, all right, men, we're going to do what God says. He said, I want everybody to get everything ready. He said, okay, I want you to get your swords all sharpened. I want you to get you some new arrows, get your bow all fixed up, and boy, be ready. We're gonna fight Jericho. And everybody said, okay. The big day came. Big day came. And he got them all lined up out front. And early in the morning, boy, they were going to march to Jericho. And some of the men said, all right, General Joshua, are we going to storm the walls? Are we going to throw ropes up and climb over the walls? Are we going to get a big old tree and batter down the doors of the gates of the city? How are we going to do that? And Joshua says, here's how we're going to do it. He said, guys, we're going to march right up to that city, and then we're going to walk all the way around it. Just march around it. They said, you mean we're not going to try to climb over the walls? I said, no, we're not going to do anything like that. We're just going to walk around it. God says to march around the city. You mean we're not going to shoot any arrows? No, don't shoot any arrows. You guys, don't even cock your bow, boy. Don't even put an arrow on the thing. You just hold it and just wait. Okay, whatever God says, that's what we'll do. So the first day they went to the city of Jericho, the great walls all the way around the Jericho to protect it, and the people inside scared to death. They'd heard about how God was taking care of the Israelites, and they just knew they were doomed. They knew they were dead inside, and boy, they were scared. Boy, not anybody even looked over the wall. And the first day, all the children of Israel did was just march around the city. That's all they did. And then they marched right home. They didn't even try to go over the wall. And I can hear some of the soldiers grumbling, saying, wonder what Joshua, what in the world he's thinking about. We could have climbed those walls. We could have been over there. We could have won the whole battle today. Now we got to walk. Man, my feet ache. Tired, dusty. Second day, Joshua got his men all together. He said, all right, guys, today we're going to go to Jericho. And everybody thought, okay, this is the day. We're going to go over the walls today. This is to be the day. This is the one we're going to march through tear down the gates and march right inside and kill everybody. That's it. He said, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk right up to the city of Jericho, and we're going to march around the city. You mean we're not going to shoot any more arrows today? No, we're not going to shoot any arrows. Don't shoot any arrows, guys. Just march around the city. That's all. That's all you're doing. You know what? They marched around the city the second day. And that's all they did, and then walked home. Walked back to the tents. And the third day, he said, all right, guys, we're going to march around the city. Man, every day, all he's doing is march around the city. By now, everybody in the city was beginning to wonder about the whole thing. Can't you see it? See all the soldiers marching around the city, marching like that. Boy, just marching around the city. And old Joshua told him, he said, don't look up. So don't you do anything but march around the city. Don't you let anybody antagonize you into shooting an arrow. He said, you just march. And boy, they're just marching, march, just march, all the way around the city. That's all they did. Thousands and thousands of Israeli soldiers. All they did was just make a big old line all the way around the city. Big old line. Can't you imagine some of the people inside Jericho scared to death? This is the third day. They're still marching. That's all they're doing. And everybody in town is saying, we were scared of those guys? Man, those guys are afraid of us. Look at it. All they're doing is marching. They don't even shoot an arrow. Look at that. After about the third or fourth day, I can see it. The people of the city of Jericho standing on the wall watching the people march around the city. They say, hey guys, got sore feet? Huh? Yeah, it's hurt walking around the city? Yeah, look at that. You're going to get bunions that way. Yes, sir. A lot of blisters. Okay. And Can't you imagine? I'm sure that's what happened. And here, marching around the city. Just marching around the city. That's all he did. 5 days, marching around the city. Everybody's standing on the wall now. A whole bunch of people on the wall. Hey, a bunch of sissies. You guys don't know how to fight, huh? Scared of us. That's it. Yeah. I can see somebody pick up a Coke can and throw at him. Here, take that one. Whap, hit him in the side of the head. And, boy, it must have been a mess. Can't you see some of the soldiers marching along there and thinking, oh, boy, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to remember you, boy. I'm going to get you. Yeah, hit me with a Coke can, will you? Okay, I'll fix you. And, boy, they're just waiting. Your day's coming. Your day's coming. Just march, march. Every time they go home into camp at night, everybody sit down and rubbing their feet. Man, I tell you what, this don't make sense. Who in the world ever heard of beating a city by marching around it? What are we supposed to do? Choke them to death with our dust as we walk around the city? It don't make sense. But that's what they do, march around the city. They did it the 6th day. 6 days. On the 6th day, all they did was march around the city. March around the city. By now, everybody's marching around the city, and they're fanning themselves. They're hot, and they're kind of walking limp, kind of like this, the whole thing. And sore feet, the whole bit, and everybody's saying, look at a bunch of idiots marching. Don't trip, guys. Don't stub your toe. Oh, going to get hurt, aren't you? Yes, bless your heart. And what a mess. What a mess. 6 days of nothing. 6 days of nothing. Joshua got all of his soldiers up on the 7th day. He said, guys, this is the day. Everybody said, okay. This is what we've been waiting on. Yes, sir, boy. I guarantee you, this is what I've been waiting for. And I know who I'm going to get first. That guy that threw the Coke can, he's going to get it first, boy. I'm going to fix him good. Yeah. All right. Okay, General, we're ready. We got our swords sharpened and our bow and arrows ready. We got our knives all fixed, and we're ready to go. How are we going to do it, General? Now, are we going to all spread out and put about 240, something like 20,000 soldiers on this side of the wall, and then 20,000 soldiers on the back side of the city, and then 20,000 soldiers over here on the west side of town, and 40,000 over here on the east side? How are we going to do it, General? Now, you think we ought to probably have some guys sneak up in the night and throw some ropes over and crawl over and open the gate so we can just run inside? How are we going to do it? He said, I tell you what we're going to do, guys. God gave me the whole plan, and you know what we're going to do today? We're going to march right up to that city, and we're going to walk around the city. We're going to walk around the city? Well, we've been doing that all week. I thought you said today we was going to take this city. We are. We're going to take it today. Well, how are we going to do it? He said, we're going to do it different today. We're not just going to march around the city one time, right? He said, right. We're going to march around it 7 times. 7 times in one day? Yeah, you're going to have to walk fast, guys. I'll guarantee you, boy. And march around it 7 times. And he said, now, after we march around it 7 times, he said, when I give you the signal, he said, I want these guys to blow the trumpets, and brother, when the trumpets sound, he said, guys, here's what I want you to do. He said, okay, this is it. We're going to run over the walls, aren't we? We're going to storm the walls. We're going to climb the walls. We're going to beat the gates down, right? Wrong. Whenever I give the signal and you hear the horns blow, run away from the city as fast as you can. Run away from it? Well, everybody's going to think we're a bunch of cowards. No, he said, you're not going to be cowards, you're going to be smart. You better run away from the wall because God's going to knock the walls over. You're going to get squashed if you don't get away from the wall. And you run away from the wall, and then when God shoves the walls over, we'll run right along the top of them. Man, just run up a flat wall, laying there on the ground, just one right across it. We ain't going to have to beat the gates down. We ain't going to climb the walls. We'll just walk right over them. They're going to fall flat. And brother, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what God did. Hey, young people, you watch this. I've heard teenagers and adults say, I don't understand God. I just don't understand why God does things certain ways. They don't make sense. Hey, the Bible says, God himself says, my ways are past finding out. He says, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts. He said, as the heavens are higher than the earth. He said, that much difference in distance. He said, that's how much different my ways are than your ways. Now watch it. Young people, hear this. Hey, learn it now. God's ways may not always be the most understandable ways, but God's ways are always the best ways. He never makes a mistake. He always knows what's best. And here they've been marching around the city. Well, if they'd have charged that the first day, just human reasoning in my own mind, I would have thought that, brother, they'd have had a bloodthirsty battle. Because the city was ready to fight. But I mean, after 6 days of walking, the city's not ready to fight. They're up there laughing at the soldiers. They think, those are the guys we've been scared of? And now inside, they're sitting there thinking, well, look at that. They're walking around it several times a day. What about that? Isn't that something? Well, let's go eat supper. And they go in. They're not too worried about the whole thing. But, brother, on the 7th day, after they walked around it the 7 times, the trumpets blew, the soldiers ran away from the wall. Suddenly, God reached down and he pushed those 4 walls around that giant city to the ground. They fell flat, and the soldiers of Israel came running across those flattened walls, went into the city, and they killed everybody and everything in sight. They did what God said. God gave them the victory. Now, young people, God help you. Understand it. God's ways are always the best ways. We may not be able to explain and understand everything God does, but I'll guarantee you, later on, we always will. We may not understand it while He's doing it, but later on we will. It'll all make sense. God always knows what's best. Because, you see, He can see the end from the beginning. Do you know God already knows what you're going to do tomorrow? Already knows it. Hey, do you know that God already knows when you're going to die? He already knows it. Hey, do you know that God knows when Jesus is coming? He knows it. He's the one that's decided it. So God's not going to make a mistake. He knows what's best because He can see the future. You can't. Why, now watch. They went inside. And boy, the soldiers, they were fighting and they were killing everybody, boy, and they're just wiping out the whole city and everything. And I can see one soldier out of the whole city of Jericho and the soldiers of Israel running into each place. And it was a systematic thing. I mean, they just didn't run into people in the streets. They had to do that too. But see, they also had to make sure that everybody was killed. And so they literally had to go into every house. And I can see the soldiers running up to a house, and they standing by the door and leaning up against the door, and then somebody kicks the door in and somebody goes charging inside a house. And they look up the stairs in the area, in the loft area, and they look in the back corners, and they look in all through that house, trying to find every place a person could hide. And they come running out and say, "Nobody in there, let's go." Or they run out of another house and say, "Okay, everybody's dead in there now, let's go." And they go from place to place. And I can just see one soldier. Out of the whole battle of Jericho, there's one soldier that God talks about. And it's not because of valor, not because of bravery, but it's because he sinned against God. His name was Achan. Achan. And I can see Achan, I don't believe that while Achan was walking around the city, he was thinking to himself, "Boy, when I get in there, I'm going to steal everything I can steal. Whenever I get in there, I don't care what God says, I'm going to take everything home I can get." That's not what Achan was saying. But literally, Achan, just doing his job, fell into temptation by the devil, and he sinned. Now watch. After Jericho, Achan stole things he shouldn't have taken. Brought things home. God said, "Okay, don't take it." But now after Jericho, they've won the big battle, and now Joshua sends some soldiers up to Ai. Ai is just up the highway a few miles from Jericho. Little bitty town. I mean, it's so small, it's, Ai, that's the way you spell it. Ai, that was the name of the town, that's the way you spelled it, Ai. And it only had 2 letters, and and that's not. They didn't have too many more people than that in the whole town. Just a little bitty place. It was so small, it didn't even have a traffic light. I mean, it was real small, just a little bitty place. And Ai, little podunk town, they didn't even have a service station there. It was horribly small. And so Joshua, he sent some spies up. And they came back after spying on Ai, and they came back and said, "General Joshua," said, "Reporting, sir," says, "just want you to know that we looked over Ai, and Ai is a little bitty hole in the road. Nothing up there, hadn't even got a traffic light, and just a little bit of fistful of people. And I tell you what, instead of sending the hundreds of thousands of soldiers that we've got, close to 1 million soldiers, instead of sending them all, let's just send 2,000 or 3,000 up there, just a fistful, and let them go up there and fight Ai. Let them take care of Ai." And so Joshua said, "Okay, I'll send 3,000. He didn't send 2, he sent 3. I'll take the benefit of the word. I'll send the most that you said. So he sent 3,000 soldiers up there. And there's 3,000 soldiers up there. They walked up there figuring they're just going to walk right over Ai. I mean, after all, they just beat one of the biggest cities in the whole land, Jericho. I mean, what's a little bitty 2x4 town called Ai going to do to them? And they go running up there, and they're going to walk up, and they figure they walk up and say "boo," and everybody runs, and that was it, and nothing to it. They figure everybody's scared to death after hearing what happened to Jericho. But they got up there, and they started to fight Ai, and literally, brother, God wasn't with them because somebody had sinned, and they didn't know it. They didn't know Achan had sinned. They didn't know that somebody had rebelled against God. And they went charging up to Ai, and the men of Ai came out there and like to beat the devil out of them. I mean, scared them to death. These guys, they figured they'd walk up and say "boo," that was all it. And these guys come running out, and the whole thing. And brother, I mean, it was a war. And brother, they had a bloodthirsty battle. And the children of Israel, they turned tail and ran. 3,000 of them turned around and ran like scared rabbits. And the amazing thing was, Ai killed 36 men of the children of Israel. Hey, again I repeat, God doesn't say anything about any Israeli soldier, Jewish soldier being killed at Jericho. And yet that was a big city battle. But in little old bitty 2x4 Ai, 36 soldiers died. And they turned and ran like cowards. And now you just got through reading it. The word came back to Joshua. Look at it there. Joshua fell on his face in prayer before God. He said, "Dear God," he said, "what's going on?" And he looked at it, and look at it again, if you will. And in verse 8, Joshua said, "O Lord, what shall I say when Israel turneth their backs before their enemies?" Why? Everybody's going to say we're a bunch of cowards. Everybody's going to say, "Hey, anybody can beat Israel. Little old bitty Ai beat them." That's what they're going to start saying. And he said, "Lord," said, "what are we going to do?" He said, "Did you bring us over here to get killed?" He said, "I don't like this." Look at verse 10, what the Lord said to Joshua. And the Lord said unto Joshua, said, "Get up off your face and quit praying. Quit belly aching, quit whining." He said, "Get thee up. Wherefore liest thou thus upon thy face?" God says, Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant which I commanded them, for they have even taken of the accursed thing, and have also stolen and disassembled themselves, and they have put it even among their own stuff. God said, somebody disobeyed me. Don't you come belly aching to me. Don't you come crying to me. There's sin in the camp. God said, get up. I'm not going to hear your prayer until you get sin taken care of first. Hey, do you know what? God never blesses anybody as long as there's sin in the way. And young people, as long as you have sin in your heart or sin in your life, you'll never have the blessings of God on your life. You want God to watch over you and protect you and keep you safe and keep you healthy and to meet your needs and to take care of you throughout life, then you're going to have to keep sin confessed and removed. Because God can't work when there's sin. And God said, get up and take care of the sin first, then we'll talk business, then we'll do something. But he said, I'm not going to work as long as there's sin, people rebelling against me. Joshua said, well, Lord, who did it? I don't know anything about that. Who did it? God told Joshua, said, I'll show you. You see, God knew. You can't do anything wrong without God knowing it. You can't do anything good without God knowing it. God knows everything you do. And God said, okay, you line up all the soldiers. Line them up by 12 tribes. And I'll tell you which one it is. And so he lined up the soldiers in the different tribes, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. There are 12 tribes altogether, named after the sons of Jacob. And so he got them all together. And he said, all right, now then, which one is it, Lord? And Joshua, he walked up in front of one of the big tribes, the families of Israel and the soldiers. He said, Lord, is it somebody in this family? God said, no, it's not that one. He said, okay, you ought to slip aside. He walked over to the next family, the next tribe, and he said, Lord, is it somebody in this family? He said, nope, not that family either. And he walked up to another family finally, and he said, Lord, is it this family? He said, yes, it's somebody in that group right there. He said, okay, want all the older daddies right up here. All the older men, line right up here. All the heads of the families. And he lined them up. He said, okay, now, Lord, he said, is it this man's family? Somebody in his family? He said, no. This man's family? Somebody in his family? No. This man's family? Somebody in his family? He said, yep. Somebody in his family. One of his boys. Oh. Get all your boys up here right now. Boy, here's the family's boys all lined up. He said, is it this boy? He said, no. Joshua said, Lord, is it that boy? He said, that's the guy. He said, son, what's your name? My name's Achan. He said, what'd you do in Jericho? Sir? What'd you take in Jericho that you wasn't supposed to take? Well, God knows who you are, and God told me you're the guy who did it. And that's the reason we got 36 soldiers dead out there in the field right now. That's the reason we've been embarrassed before all the whole nation of people. They're going to think they can all lick us. You tell the truth. God's already said you're the one. And old Achan broke down and began to cry and tell the whole truth. Look at it. You've got it there in chapter 7. Look down. And in verse 20, and Achan answered Joshua and said, behold, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and thus have I done. He said, here's what I did. He said, when I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonian garment, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight, then I coveted them. He wanted them. And I took them, And behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. Now look, there are 4 things Achan did to sin. Watch it. Verse 21 again. He said, I saw. I saw. You see, the first thing the devil does to get you to want to do something wrong, he gets you to look at it. He puts it out in front of you. He says, I saw it. He presented it. The devil presented it with him. And then he says, I coveted it, or I wanted it. I desired it. He said, I desired it. He said, after I saw it, he said, I got thinking about that thing. He thought, man alive, I'd sure like to have that stuff. And he said, and the more I thought about it, he said, the more I began to think to myself, well, who's going to find out? And he said, and then after I figured out a way that I could get them where nobody could see me take them, he said, then I took it. He said, I saw it, I wanted it, I took it. He said, then I did it. And then there's 4 things that everybody does who sins. They see it first, they want it, they begin to desire it, they begin to think about how they could get away with it, they plan it out, and then they go ahead and do it. And then the 4th thing, they try to hide it. He said, and I hid it in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. Literally, Achan said this. He said, here's how it happened. He said, I didn't mean to go into the city and steal anything. He said, I wasn't going to. But he said, I ran into this house, and he said, I was just doing my job as a soldier there in Jericho. And he said, and I was killing everybody in sight. And he said, I ran into this house to see if anybody was in there so that I could make sure that we'd kill everybody like God said. And he said, and I ran inside and I checked and I was looking around. And he said, and I realized there wasn't anybody in the house. But he said, while I was looking around, he said, man, I saw the most beautiful suit of clothes you ever laid eyes on. A goodly Babylonian garment. He said, brother, you talk about nice. I mean, polyester, double knit, Hart, Schaffner, and Marks. I mean, it was something else. He said, I could hardly believe it. I mean, good-looking suit. And he said, I looked at that thing, and he said, I started to run out of the house, and I said, boy, that's a good-looking suit. And he thought, well, no, I better get busy. It does look nice, doesn't it? And he thought, well, I better get out there and finish. And he said, I began to wonder if it fit. And so he said, I just walked over there and laid my shoulder down real quick. I figured, well, it won't take but a second, just out of curiosity, see if it fits. And he said, you know what? It fit just right. Hey, that's the way the devil works. He knows what you like, and he knows what you will do wrong. He knows where you're weak, and he'll always trip you up in your weak point. And the devil has sin that'll fit you perfectly. He knows exactly what to put out in front of you because he knows what you're going to do if he sticks it out there long enough. And he said, man, I tried that thing on. He said, boy, that was just my size. That thing fit. And he said, man, I walked over and looked in that mirror, and he said, oh, you dog, you, wow. Oh, boy, howdy. Boy, your wife's going to go crazy when she sees that suit. Man, alive. Boy, that's kind of hard to pass up. And he said, I said, no, I can't take that thing. He said, and I took it off, and I laid it down on the table, and he said, when I did, I noticed a big pile of money. Boy, somebody must have had their money out and they was trying to hide it or something, and soldiers must have come in and killed them because look at the money's all scattered all over the table now. Boy, look at that. Wow, a lot of silver there. Look at it. Isn't that something? Wonder how much is there. Hey, I better get back out there and, well, it wouldn't take but a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 100, 10, 15, 130, 185, 197, 198, 190, 200 pieces of silver. Whew, boy, that sure sounds good in my pocket. Boy, I could walk around in the tents, and I guarantee I walk around camp, I could buy anything I wanted. Walk around all that money, Jimmy, 200 pieces. Man, that lasts me a good while. That's a lot of money. But I better not take it. I better, hey, oh, what's that? Look there, I laid my coat on something. Man, alive, there's the biggest bar of gold I ever saw in my life. Look at that thing. Great big old bar of gold. What is it? Boy, it's heavy, dude. Man, I bet that's 50 shekels weight. 200 pieces of silver, 50 shekels weight of gold, a new suit. Man, I guarantee you, I sure do want it.
And you know what? And everybody's busy. They're not going to see me. I'll just hide it real good, and I'll go ahead and finish fighting. And he said, and then when I get home, I'll bury it in my tent under the ground. And nobody will ever know it. I won't even tell my wife, blabbermouth. She'll tell everybody, you know. And I'll just keep quiet, and I'll just bring it out one day. Whenever she says, where'd you get that? I said, well, I got it. I'll wait till we find another city, and then I'll pull it all out and say, well, that's where I got it. It was in this other city, see? And everybody think, man, look at that guy. He sure got some nice stuff. So he said, boy, I'll fix it. You know, he looked around, he decided, now how in the world am I going to get that stuff out of here? I know. And he opens up that suit, and he puts over 200 shekels of silver in there, and he puts that wedge of gold inside that suit, and he rolls that suit up, you know, and rolls it up into a big old wad. And he said, now what in the world, how can I get this out of here without anybody seeing it? He said, I know. I'll fix it so nobody can see it. And he said, there it is. Now nobody can see it. Boy, I'll walk around the whole thing, you know, and I'll just fight the rest of this war, and ain't nobody going to see what I got. And boy, I'll take it home, and I'll stick it in the tent. And there he goes, fighting a little battle, you know, big old bulge in his stomach. I said, look, that guy's been eating too much lately, you know. And ain't nobody going to know that. And so there he goes. He said, that's what I did. He said, I didn't mean to do it, but I did it. Hey, young people, watch it. Just like Achan, you can't play with sin and get away with it. You can't get by with it. There's no way in this world that you can play with sin and get away with it. You say, well, I'm smart. I have to be smarter than anybody else. I can get away with sin. Hey, I don't care how smart you think you are. God literally knows you've sinned, and God is going to make sure that you get found out. You see, God saw you. You can't hide from God. And now Joshua said, is that what you did? And Achan said, that's what I did. Joshua said, you know what you did? He said, yeah, I took a suit of clothes and some money and some gold. And he said, no, that's not what you did. You sinned against God. And he said, and because of that, we lost a battle to a little bitty 2x4 town called Ai down there. He said, not only that, because of your sin, 36 people are dead. Hey, you see, young people, you may play with sin, and you say, well, if I get caught, it's just me that gets hurt. Oh, no. Oh, no. You can't play with sin without hurting somebody else. You can't play with sin without hurting somebody else. Hey, you'll hurt your parents. You'll hurt your brothers and sisters. You'll hurt that loved one or friend. Hey, you'll hurt the person you played in sin with if you do it with somebody else. Hey, you'll cause somebody to go to hell because of your sin. You'll influence somebody else to sin because of your wickedness. And you'll help kill somebody else and send them to hell. God help you, young people. You can't play with sin without hurting other people. He said 36 people are dead. Others are wounded. And he said, and God has been disgraced. You sinned against God. That's what you did. And he not only did that, you know what else he did? Achan sin. Little bitty sin. You know what else he did? He stopped the prayers of God. You know God couldn't answer prayer? Joshua and all the leaders of Israel fell on their face after Ai's defeat. They fell on their face and began to pray, oh God, do something, straighten this thing out, make it right. And God said, shut up and get up from there and get sin made right first. Hey, you have sin in your life. You better forget about praying. God's not going to hear your prayers and give you anything you need. The only prayer God's going to hear from a Christian out of fellowship, a Christian playing in sin, is, oh God, I confess my sin to you. Then he'll forgive you. And then you can he'll answer other prayers. I'll guarantee you what? It doesn't pay with sin. It doesn't pay, rather, to play with sin. You'll make the mistake of your life if you play with sin. But I've heard guys say, that's all right, I can get away with it. No. Sin will find you out. The Bible says, be sure your sins will find you out. You know what happened to Achan? Look at it. Chapter 7 again. Here's what happened to Achan. Watch it. We're closing. In verse 22, Joshua sent messengers, and they ran into the tent, and they brought the stuff that Achan hid. It was there just like he said it was. And they took Achan, the things out of the midst of the tent, and brought them unto Joshua and all the children of Israel, and laid them before the Lord. Verse 24, and Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold. But notice that's not all they took. They took his sons, they took his daughters, they took his oxen, his asses, his sheep, his tent, and everything he had. And they brought them unto the valley of Achan, and Joshua said, Why hast thou troubled us, or why did you do this thing to hurt us? The Lord shall hurt thee, trouble thee, or hurt thee this day. And all Israel stoned Achan with stones and burned them, his sons, his cattle, everything, his tent, his belongings. They stoned them and burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. Achan was destroyed by sin. Now you listen to me. You say, well, I'm a Christian. I can't be destroyed by sin. Yes, you can. Sin will destroy a Christian just as sure as anything else. Just as sure as anyone else. You cannot sin and get away with it. You say, well, I can lie and get away with it. No, you can't lie and get away with it. You say, well, nobody's going to find out. Oh, yes. A liar is always found out. No way in the world. I used to think my mother had eyes in the back of her head when I was a boy growing up in Oklahoma City. I knew she did. She had to have eyes in the back of her head. I mean, I'd sneak and sneak and sneak and sneak and sneak. I couldn't figure out, how in the world she ever figured out I was smoking? How'd she ever find that out? I mean, it's kind of difficult. Guy in the 6th grade comes running in and brushes his teeth about 8 times a day. That's not too smart. And she knew something was wrong. She can smell it on me. I remember one thing. I never could figure out how they did that until I got a little older. Then it dawned on me. You know what it is? Sin will always find you out. You can't get away with sin. You can lie about it the whole thing. We lived on the west side of Oklahoma City, real poor section. It's one of the poor sides of the city. And we lived about a half a mile from the North Canadian River. Now, the North Canadian River there in Oklahoma City, most of the time it was dry. Now, every once in a while, they'd open the floodgates down at the lake, down at the dam, and the river would be full. And you didn't go swimming in the river when it was full unless you really knew how to swim. I went one time and almost drowned. I was carried, I guess, about a quarter of a mile downstream until I caught a tree limb. And I'd have been dead if I hadn't caught that tree limb. But my parents told Bruce and I, my older brother Bruce, said, don't you guys go swimming in the river. You stay out of the river. You can drown down there. Don't you go down to the river. And that was the place we decided we wanted to go then. We weren't supposed to go there, so that's where we wanted to go. And we figured, ain't nobody ever going to find out. And we go down there. Now, most of the time when we went swimming down there, most of the time the river was dry, except for what we called sinkholes. You know what a sinkhole is? That's a part of the riverbed where there's a big hole, and when the river is flowing and it's full, well, then naturally everything is covered. But then when the river dries up, there's little holes in the dry riverbed that are still filled with water. And, of course, the North Canadian River was dry most of the time, so these little water holes, sinkholes, they really, the water was not very good water. To be honest, it was beautiful water, I mean, it was real pretty. It was green and yellow and blue, and slimy looking, and the whole thing. Had all kinds of little creatures running in it, and the whole thing. And it was stagnant water. But we'd go down there swimming. We'd go down swimming in the sinkholes. We'd hide along the riverbank there, we'd shuck all our clothes, and we'd go running out there in the riverbank, and we'd jump in the sinkhole. And man, we'd swim up a storm, several of us guys. But we never did dive. You know why we didn't dive? Didn't want to get our hair wet. That way, see, nobody could tell we'd been swimming. And so we'd always swim and say, nope, don't splash your face, don't want to get your hair wet, And man, we'd swim, we'd have a big time. We'd swim for about an hour, and then we'd go home. We'd get out, dress up, and go home, and hair dry. Boy, we'd check everybody else. Hair dry? Yeah, it feels good and dry. Nobody going to know we've been swimming. And so we walk in the house. And Mother said, "You boys been down near the river?" I said, "No, ma'am, we wouldn't do anything like that." "No, no." And she'd come up there and she'd look at us. She said, "You been swimming?" And we'd say, "How do you know?" You know. I never could figure it out. She didn't say, "I know, you been swimming. Come in here, you're going to get licked." Brother, we get licked. You know how she found out we've been swimming? Because when you swim in stagnant water, it smells. It stinks. It's like swimming in rotten eggs. That's about what it's like. But the problem is, it's kind of like eating onions. Here was the problem. We didn't know we stunk. Because we all stunk, you know. And we all smelled the same as far as we was concerned, you know. "Oh, yeah, everybody, you smell all right. Yeah, wonderful, good, yeah." We all smell the same. It's like eating onions, you know. If everybody eats onions, there's no problem. You can't really tell it. But if somebody doesn't eat onions, the person who doesn't eat onions, when they walk up and shake your hand and say, "Hey, it's good to..." You know, give them the old breath test. Hold your hand up in front of their face and your fingers wilt. You know, like that. Well, that's the way it was to us. We felt our hair. It was completely dry. We looked each other over, and we walked around each other. We didn't smell anything wrong. You know why? Because we all stunk. We all smelt the same. But then when we got home where somebody had not been sinning, where somebody had not been down disobeying in the sinkholes, then they didn't stink, and they could sure smell us. And that's what it was. Hey, watch it. Hey, you play with sin, God's going to find you out. God's going to make sure that somebody knows it. You steal something, you take something that doesn't belong to you, whether it's money or things, God's going to find you out. You can't get away with it. You can't get away with sin, whether it's lying, stealing, cheating, whatever it is. God's going to find you out. See, God already knows it, and he's going to make sure other people find out about it. Be sure your sins will find you out. Achan proved it. Hey, he hurt other people. He stopped the prayers of God, the blessings of God. Watch it. And he destroyed himself. You play with sin, and you'll destroy yourself too. God help you, young people. Be clean. Always obey God. You say, "Yeah, but I know people who aren't obeying God, and they're getting away with it." No, they're not. They may be getting away with it right this minute, but brother, their day is coming, and they're going to get caught. They're going to get caught. God help you. Don't play with sin. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Every head bowed? Every eye closed. You play with sin, you're not saved. You play with sin, brother, it'll send you to hell. You'll die and go to hell. If you are saved, you play with sin, it'll end up killing you. It'll destroy you, even though you're saved. You won't go to hell. You'll go to heaven when you die if you're saved. But a lot of Christians go to heaven a lot sooner than God wants them to. God wants Christians to live a long life. But if you sin against God, you won't live as long as you would if you obeyed him. How about it? I'm going to ask the preacher to stand here at the front, and the teachers are watching with me. Heads are bowed and eyes are closed. Let me ask everybody that's a Christian, if you're saved, heads are bowed, eyes are closed, no one looking around but us. If you're saved, hold your hand up. Hold your hand up high. If you're saved.